my life, mending broken people. I want to spend my life removing pain. Lord, let my words heal a heart that hurts. I want to spend my life mending broken people. I want to spend my life mending broken people.
Hello and welcome to 3ABN Today. My name is C.A. Murray, and allow me once again to thank you for sharing just a little of your day with us. Thank you for your love, your prayers, your support of this ministry. We realize that we could not do what we are called to do without your partnering with us, so we thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I am excited beyond belief, dare I say, this day because of my guest, because of the subject matter, and I want you really to draw close and give ear because we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. Rachel Williams Smith is the chairman of the Department of Communication at Andrews University, and we will get to that. But there is a whole lot of story before we get to Andrews University that we want you really to give ear to, because you may know someone, you may be someone, you may have a chance to minister to someone who has had a background similar and has gone through similar experiences. I doubt that you have gone through the exact same experiences, but perhaps something similar. And today you're going to learn a little bit about how one overcomes a lot of adversity, how one overcomes through the power of Christ a bunch of negativity that could shape and mold and warp, dare I say, someone's childhood and move right into their adulthood. But Rachel has overcome that in a marvelous way, and we're going to talk about her walk, her journey, and I think you're going to be inspired and really impressed by this woman of God who has done some great things and is doing some great things and has managed to put all of this down in a book that we're going to talk about in just a little bit. First of all, good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
She told me that her mom is a fan of 3ABN. And I said, well, what about you? She said, well, I watch it some. Well, she's going to watch it more from now on. I guarantee you.
I guarantee you I'm going to watch this show.
Praise the Lord. She is an educator and spent some time on the faculty at Oakwood University and now is chair of the department at Andrews University. And we're going to talk about all of that. But before we go too much further, I want to stop and ask you, you're from where?
Now?
No, originally.
Well, I was born in Massachusetts, but my parents left there when I was 6 months old. So the first place I remember being is Spain, and then I kind of Alabama, and then I grew up in Tennessee. My father was in the military. Did I mention that? So when people ask me where I'm from, I say I don't know, but I claim growing up in Tennessee.
In Tennessee, okay.
Yes.
Because having been down here a while, I know the Tennessee accent.
Yes.
And you ain't got that.
Well,
I don't hear it that much.
I can if I need to. I can have it.
Indeed, you can. But perhaps since having a military dad and moving around so much, your accent is pretty Midwestern, pretty neutral, a little New England in there.
I credit that to my mother.
Yeah.
My mother was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And so she had very proper diction.
Yes.
And she modeled that for us. And she insisted that her 3 children, my 2 older brothers and myself, spoke properly, wrote properly. And that's a gift that she gave me that was invaluable.
Yes. Now, I don't need to ask, knowing a little bit of your story, if you grew up in an Adventist home, because you grew up in really an ultra-Adventist home.
Isn't there a book out called Beyond Beliefs? I was going to say Beyond Adventist.
Yes.
Yeah, we grew up beyond Adventist.
Very, very, very
Yes.
Adventist home. Brothers and sisters, siblings?
2 older brothers,
Uh-huh.
2 and 3 years older than me.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So the only girl in a
And the
family of
youngest.
3 children. And the baby to boot.
Yeah.
Give us some sense before we go to music, just of growing up as a child. What was your childhood like, the early childhood?
Very, very early childhood was fairly normal. So when I'm speaking of that, I'm saying from birth to about 5, just the normal things, play, fight, whatever.
Yeah.
There were some elements that were already in my life. For one, my father had issues with having a daughter, didn't want to have a girl.
Ah.
And I know that he loved me in his own way. Yeah, I know that mentally, not emotionally, but I know that factually. But he did not know how to show that, and he had certain issues about having a daughter. So he wouldn't play with me like he would with his. He wouldn't play with me at all. He wouldn't touch me, hold me, do things with me, and I knew there was a real divide between male and female. So I knew that at a little girl. So I grew up with a great fear of my father. But apart from that, my life was normal. We lived off the base because my father was in the Air Force, and they only have an Army base in Huntsville, Alabama. So after being born in Massachusetts and then moving to Alabama and then moving to Spain for a couple of years, moving back to Huntsville, Alabama, it was when we moved back I began to see changes in our lives. First with diet and then with dress. And then my parents began homeschooling us. So by the time I was 6, that's when our lives began to go in a radically different direction.
Now, were they Adventists previous to that, or was that their entrance into Adventism?
No, they were Adventists. My mother became an Adventist at 15 years old.
Ah, okay.
And she ended up coming down to Oakwood and doing her pre-nurse's training there. And then she got her registered. She became a registered nurse at Hinsdale.
Okay.
So, and my father ended up coming to Oakwood. He did his pre-nursing and then finished up with his, became a registered nurse as well, I believe at New England Sanitarium. I can't remember the details. But anyway, so they both were registered nurses. But I lost my train of thought. There was a question you asked me, and I was going in that direction.
We were just talking about your early childhood. Having said that, though, both of your parents had stable, good jobs. They were professional people.
And my father was in the Air Force, so there was everything was stable. But my father while they were in Spain, they couldn't understand the language, so they spent a lot of time reading the Bible and other books. Little red volumes of books, and they began to read all kinds of reforms, and they began to read other books that were coming out at the time, speaking out about the church and how it was becoming worldly and all of these concepts. So they became more and more concerned. And then my mother became very interested in health, so that led to our change to what we would now call a vegan diet, which was actually a good change. It just didn't taste good. So as a small kid, I was not appreciating
not going to fly
it.
with you.
No. But then the big change, and then the dresses, the long dresses. I remember my mother told me that Jesus in Revelations is pictured as wearing a garment down to the foot, and that Ellen White says that we should wear our dresses 2 to 3 inches from the floor, and she wanted to know if I wanted to be like Jesus. Well, not too many 6-year-olds would say, no, I don't want to be like Jesus,
right.
Especially if they grow up in a Christian home. So I ended up adopting that. I actually have a picture of myself in my first homemade long dress and holding my little kitten there outside our home in Huntsville, Alabama. But when my parents decided to homeschool us, it was illegal in the state of Alabama, and there weren't the provisions that there are now. So this was right about 1971 and 1971 or so, and there weren't provisions for homeschooling that there are now. So the state threatened to take us away. And my father said, not if I could help it.
Now, let me ask a question, because we talked about them being ultra-Adventist. So you've got this sort of jaundiced view of the organized church.
Yes.
They're not what they ought to be. We need to pull back from that. Plus, they're reading all of this material that is kind of swinging to the right.
Yes.
Vegan vegetarianism, dresses down to the floor, even though that material is 150 years old.
Right.
They're taking this and applying all of this stuff.
Absolutely.
So as young people, were you kind of rolling with this, or did this seem kind of strange to you?
At the young age of 5 and 6 years old, when the changes began to come, I mean, the diet probably hit me more because I liked my corn curls and my potato chips and my ice cream.
Yeah, and that's out.
And that was all out.
Yeah.
And my mom used to make this wonderful Sunday morning breakfast with, you know, fluffy white biscuits and all the things that I loved. And then she puts a hard whole wheat biscuit on my plate and is trying to tell me that's healthy.
Yeah.
And all I had to say is it must be healthy because it sure didn't.
It don't taste like anything.
So you know how young children. So that affected me more. The dresses, I don't really remember. Once I learned not to trip on them, I was fine. But then the homeschooling, that made a big difference because I really, really, really had this desire to learn. I wanted to go to school. And I had a best friend named Lisa who we were gonna start first grade together. And she got to start and I didn't.
Oh.
And I was so sad that first day in the fall where I was sitting at a little wooden desk. My father had picked up 3 little wooden desks. And I'm sitting in the living room with my brothers in my own little desk. And I'm thinking about the kids at the Anna Knight Elementary School.
Oh, yes.
At Oakwood, on the campus of Oakwood College at the time.
Yes.
And how they're having this great time. And I'm confined in the little, and memorizing quotes. I think the first quote we ever had to memorize was Steps to Christ, page 10. God is love is written upon every spiral of springing grass. Every opening bud, every spiral of springing grass. I had to memorize that whole paragraph. And I just knew that I was a poor, deprived child.
Yeah. I'm thinking, though, because homeschooling now, as you have alluded to, is illegal.
Yes.
So there's a lot of attendant drama to this because it's your parents are involved in an illegal activity.
Right.
And yet they are convicted enough to do this.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the ramifications of that kind of lifestyle, if you as kids were aware of that and what they had to do to hold on to that. But before we go there, I want to go to our music so we can get this out the way and come back, because this story is starting to get to me a little bit. And, and this is really, really interesting. We got to get through this and get you to Andrews University.
Yes. I mean, we're still stuck at me at 6 years old.
Yeah, but there's a lot here. Okay. And I don't want to gloss over too much of that. Thank goodness you've put this in a book. So in a little bit, we will be able to read this story and grow from it. But I want to kind of unpack this experience because it has gone into making you what you are. More than that, you've had to overcome a lot of stuff to get to where you are. And that's what I want to sort of deal with. So for now, our music is coming from the Madisonians. They're going to be singing Amazing Grace.
Saved a wretch like me.
What a wonderful group of young people, the Madisonians. Amazing Grace. Thank you so very, very much. My good lady, when we left, you were 6 years old. You are still 6 years old. But I find it interesting because your parents are engaging in an illegal activity because they're convicted that that's what they need to do. They are homeschooling you and your two brothers. And is that causing any kind of friction, any kind of problems?
Not between them, but yes, with the state, so
Yes.
or the city. So the city of Huntsville basically gave my parents an ultimatum: either enroll us in school or we were going to be taken away. And my father, being the very strong Vietnam vet, military man that he was, captain, he was not going to be told what to do. So he basically took us out in the middle of the night, loaded us up in the van, and whisked us off to Arkansas. And then from there, we ended up in a bus. So you take a school bus and you convert it into a mobile home. And we kind of camped out where we needed to so we could avoid the authorities. We actually spent a year living up on Monte Sano in a state park for an entire year. You're only supposed to rent it 2 weeks at a time, but we were there for an entire year, living there, and we just moved our bus from one location to another.
Yeah.
We did that just once, really, and that's where we were for an entire year. And then my parents bought 50 acres in Tennessee.
Now, a couple of things, because you're throwing so
I'm
much at me.
trying to move forward to it.
You're throwing so, this could be a 2-hour show. But as young people, that can be an exciting adventure, or that can be very traumatic. How did you and your brothers take that?
I think everything for us was just day to day. We didn't question it, or at least I didn't really. It was just the way life was. I think children generally tend to be like that.
Yeah.
And in my story, I include episodes with ongoing competitions with my brothers about things. Of course, I never won the competitions for the most part, but try to compete with them, and the day-to-day perspectives that a child might have on life. But I'm allowing the reader to see what's happening, even though it's coming through the eyes of a child.
Okay, so you're writing through the eyes of a child.
Yeah.
So you're bussing it for a year and change, and now you're on 50 acres out in the middle of.
Yes, this was in Tennessee.